Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as I always say. And in this video, I thought I would do some stories, encounters, occurrences, I guess, from Canada. So, if that sounds like something that you like, definitely pull up a stump, like and subscribe, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. So I don't normally like telling these stories, but today's a good day. So, let me set the scene for you. My mom and dad bought a piece of property out in the boonies of northern Manitoba, Canada. This property lies on the last major east to west road that goes north. What I mean by that is, north of this road, there's nothing but forest, swamp, and lake. And I mean nothing. For hundreds of kilometers, not a single community until you hit the Arctic tree line, which is basically how I got my start as an outdoorsman. Anyways, the property is on a crossroads of roads going southeast and west. 4 miles to the east, there is a main road. West, 50 kilometers of dense swamp to the next town. And then, somewhere around 12 miles south, is a little town again. We had one neighbor, I guess, 2.5 miles west of us. The hunting was great in this area, if you couldn't already tell. But anyways, here's what happened. So this happened to my older brother. It was 1 a.m. or so in the morning. He decides to go out and have a smoke. He goes outside, and he decides to let his new puppy, Molly, come out with him. Wild animals roam abundantly, as you might guess, so he takes the spotlight, and he doesn't want to grab a rifle, so he also grabbed a hammer. Now hearing that, you might think to yourself, why did he grab a hammer? What's that gonna do? And my answer for that is that he's kinda stupid, so I don't know what else to tell you there. Anyways, he wants to see how far the new spotlight will shine, so he walks to the road. From the driveway, he shines the light south. The puppy starts whimpering, crying and shaking, looking north. He turns north. Next to the stop sign stands this tall, gray, hairless creature, standing on 2 feet like a person. 2 legs, 2 arms. These arms and legs are too long for the torso. It looks really weird. And this thing has dark, sunken-in eyes and a wide slit for a mouth. It's a proportionate head, so this is not a gray. We measured later, using me as a reference to the stop sign the next day, and we figured out it was really, really tall. It stood motionless. My brother froze in horror, but he was finally able to scream, "Oh, F." The creature grimaced and then twitched as if expecting something to happen, but it stood its ground and didn't move. My brother knew that if he attacked it, he would lose, so all he could do was run. And run he did. He ran his ass off. The dog was already long gone ahead of him. He looked back because he didn't hear anything behind him as he ran. The creature was in the cattails of the ditch, attempting to hide, but it was massive and pale compared to the scenery, and its eyes glowed white from the light. He kept running. He found the dog cowering near the porch door. He picked her up and let her sleep in his bed that night. He didn't sleep at all. He tells us all the next day, hysterical. I later seen the same creature, along with some of my family, and a few locals did too after asking around. I know it's basically a meme at this point, but I saw it, and my brother's description was exactly what you'd expect like a rake or a skinwalker to look like. However, what we saw was much, much larger, and obviously we don't have a name for this, so suggestions are welcome, or even what you think it might be. We just call it the creature at this point. And I hear some people asking, why didn't he wake us up? why didn't he call the police? And I think, wake us up and do what? It wasn't violent. It was just as horrified as he was, almost like it didn't know what he was. What were we supposed to do? Shoot it? Find it first, and now it's scared. And now there would have been 3 armed people out there in the bush trying to hunt something that knows the forest like the back of your hand. Not only that, being frozen in fear and not sure what you've seen or what it's capable of. People like this who've never been in the situation, even close, and make assumptions like this, are why people like me and other real bush people keep their stories to themselves. So this one time in 2016, I was driving home from work, and I live in a secluded place, so each time I had to drive to and from work quite a ways. It's the winter time, so it's very dark outside. I always drive through a secluded road through the woods. It's eerie, but kind of comfy in a way. I mostly have my iPhone hooked up to my car stereo, but this night I decided to just listen to the radio. I was changing the channels, going through stations. It was mostly shitty pop or rock songs and annoying commercials. Then, I get to this station. It sounds like a talk show. I decide to listen. The 2 talk show hosts are speaking of bringing a woman in for an interview. She's supposed to be a student, talking about issues that a student may face. The topic seemed pretty boring to me, but whatever, it was something to listen to besides crappy music. So they get the girl on the show, and they start asking some standard questions. I find out that she's from a town near Perth and studying history. I think about how I've never come across this station before, so I glanced down to see what it is, and it didn't recognize the radio station name. It just said unknown. I shrug it off and I just listen. The girl had a soft voice, as if you could hear her apathy coming through the speakers. The hosts were struggling to keep the interview interesting. She also seemed to wander off to other ramblings. Then, the interview gets a little odd. The interview went something like, the host asks, "So, you knew from the beginning that you were going to study history?" And the girl says, "Yeah, pretty much. I know things. I can see them just forming, you know." "How do you mean?" "You know, you just kind of know, I guess. Like, I knew that my father would leave my mother. I knew I'd get a sister with the new guy my mom would date, and I knew I was gonna die at 25. Sometimes you kinda feel this stuff." At this point, I was confused. What did she just say? The host said, "You knew you were gonna die?" The girl says, "Well, yeah, I've had this feeling all my life." The host asked again, "So, are you afraid? You know, knowing?" "No." "Brave girl, Jim, brave girl." The 2 hosts seem to try to laugh it off. The girl says, "I'm not afraid. I was, though." The host says, "So, what changed your mind?" "Well, it happened." "How old are you, Gina?" Gina says, "I'd be 26. "You would be?" "Yeah." This was getting interesting by this point. One of the hosts asked her, "So you're trying to tell me that you're past the point of death?" "Yes." "But you're here with us. How's this possible?" And she says, "I don't know. I can't leave." The host seemed to get a bit agitated as the guys started to make fun of her. One of the hosts tries to put the interview back on track, but the other guys kinda want to know more about what's going on here. They argue for a bit, but the guy just goes and asks, So Gina, how did you die? My boyfriend strangled me. Did you know this was going to happen? Yeah, like I said, I've seen it. You feel it. The host jokes, should have picked a better boyfriend then. The other dude says, don't forget, now ex-boyfriend, and they laugh it off, and then it gets a bit awkward. Gina, really? Are you telling me that you're dead? In front of us? Dead? The girl says yes. The other dude goes on something about her probably being on drugs. Again, all I hear is the host going, oh wow, she's actually really cold. And then there's a full 2 seconds of radio silence, and my car breaks down. And it occurs to me that my car is completely screwed. It just died. I managed to stop it alongside the road. It's the middle of nowhere in this really thickly wooded area, and for some reason my phone is dead too. I go to check the engine, and I think this must be a problem with the battery or something. And then I stare at the engine and realize that I don't know anything about how to fix an engine or a car. I decide to wait for anyone that might pass by, and maybe they'll be able to help me. I don't know. So I light up a cigarette and just chill. It's cold out, but I also like to be outside. So I'm just hanging out by the side of my car. I can hear somebody coming. Not a car, but footsteps. And from the road, I can see a figure. It's feminine. It's a mid-20-something girl. She kinda nods, and I nod back. She asks, what happened? I say, I don't know, car trouble. My phone died. Can you call anyone? She just looks at the car. Nah. I say, what do you mean? Do you not have a phone? And she just is still looking at the car and replies, nah. We're kind of in silence at this point. I say, so, do you live here? She said, well, I used to. There's another awkward silence. At this point, I was feeling really awkward around her, kind of like an awkward teenager. Talking to this chick just felt super weird and eerie for some reason. I say, well, I do need to get home. Do you know if there's a town nearby or something? I knew there was a small town, but it would take me an hour and a half of hiking, and I was hoping for something closer. I wanted to see my chances. The girl is silent, but finally speaks. Do you know what it's like to be hurt? I'm like, what the frig? What do you mean? She says, do you know? I say, yeah, I guess. Depends on what though. There's silence again. You know, I loved him and still do. Okay. So why did he do this? I say, who? Did what? What are you talking about? At this point, I realized as soon as I got that word out, I couldn't breathe. I was suffocating. I was panicking like a mad dog, just looking around, trying to get a gasp of air. And then I fall on the ground and I look up. She's gone, just vanished. This went on for about 30 seconds before I finally was able to get a gasp of air. I was laying on the ground like, what the hell is happening? What was that? I got up and leaned on my car, trying to process what happened. I was there for another 20 minutes before I decided to hitchhike to town. I was lucky that a truck stopped a couple of minutes later. I got into town and found a way home. I'm at a loss for what happened, what I heard on the radio, and everything that happened afterwards. So years ago, I was in Cub Scouts. It was the middle of the summer, and our troop had planned a week-long canoe trip. On the day of the trip, Our actual leader gets called away for some family emergency or something I don't remember and can't come. So, our sub-leaders decide that it would be best if we hire a local guide to help us. They find a local hunter who knows the river we want to go down quite well, and he obliges. The first few days are fine. He's super nice and everything else. This one evening, we make it to an islet. The shore has rocks and branches strewn everywhere. Further up, where the woods begin, there are odd branches, almost arranged, what looks to be like a structure or something. The guide is a little uneasy. He says he's never seen something like this before. We spent the evening setting up, making a fire and playing games. Just before sunset, from the woods, we hear this terrifying screech. It was almost like a howling, but more guttural. The guy grabs his rifle and tells us to put out the fire. The sound is heard again, but this time, much closer. Our guide tells us to get the canoes ready, just in case. He wanders off into the woods, and silence follows. We all stand there on the shore, trying not to be freaked out. Suddenly, there's another screech and a gunshot. The leaders guide us into the canoe and stand in the water ready to cast off. We hear another shot, and then another screech, this time more sustained. The guide comes running out of the woods and onto our boat. He yells, "We can't stay here. Go, go, go." We cast off into the water. By this time it's dusk and too dark to see if anything is on the shore. We paddle for an hour until we find a place much further down the river. In the days following, like the rest of our trip, nothing really happened, but we were all still just a little rattled after this. This is northern Ontario, and I have some family there. Years later, I went for a visit, and I recanted this story to some people, and they weren't surprised. The guide in question, while experienced, was only 27 at the time, and while knowing the river quite well, he didn't know the woods as well as some of the more senior guides would, and a lot of them have stories of run-ins with whatever these were, being watched in cabins, having rocks thrown from seemingly nowhere, sometimes dogs ending up mutilated after chasing these things. A lot of indigenous people tend to agree that it's Sasquatch, and it's also known that they can be really, really territorial. Some people may laugh at this notion of an ape in the woods of Canada and elsewhere, but I'm telling you my experience, and the experience of plenty others, that there's definitely something weird in those woods. I live in southern Ontario, and this happened in 2014. I was 16 years old. I walk everywhere because I just never bothered getting my license. So, I have this friend. She lives all the way down this major road that eventually leads into the countryside where she sorta lives. She invites me to this forest party in the back of her house. I'm a bit indifferent to the woods. I just get a weird off feeling whenever I'm in there. I don't like partying either, but I have nothing better to do, and I like her, so I go. Anyways, I say alright, and I tell her that I plan on leaving at around 4 p.m. My town has a very low crime rate, so I'm not too freaked out by walking in the dark. So by the time I leave, which happens to be just a few minutes before 4, it's already snowing. It's that heavy, thick kind that's going to be a pain once it builds up. I'm prepared anyways, and I start making my way toward the main road. There's cars speeding by like a blur, and they die out into the darkness as the streetlights disappear. And I think they're probably just turning into housing areas or something like that. The streetlights are starting to disappear as I walk now. The joy of redneck suburbia, right? I have my phone on to check my GPS for her house, and my phone tells me 20 more minutes. And I think, damn, Ontario has these really cold-ass winters, don't they? It's dead silent, the soft crunching of fallen snow, and my breath is all that exists now. There's not even any wind, just slow snowfall. It's now 5 p.m., which is weird. It usually takes me only 40 minutes to get there. I can't see anything anymore, but my eyes have adjusted enough to see a bit of the road ahead of me and the fields that are on my left and right. The tree lines are darker than the sky. I only noticed this because I always thought it was pretty. As I'm staring off, I begin hearing this ringing. It's really loud, too loud for it to be in my ears. If you've seen The Shining, it's like that. I think maybe it's a car that has like a busted wheel bearing or something, or brakes. I start looking around, and then I realize that I once again can't see anything, and the snow blurs my vision, so there's no point in looking. The snow is falling faster as I start walking faster. It's just a freaky sound, and The Shining really scared the shit out of me, okay? I kinda do this half speed walk, half jog, and check my phone, and think, what the hell? My battery has gone down to 10%, and it's almost 6 p.m. now. I've barely moved from my last spot as well on my GPS, and I think, did I somehow go the wrong way? Where am I? As I try to reason with myself, I hear a train. I am near Peterborough, and I mean, so it's whatever. But the ringing heightens and gets louder. I start to look around and think, what's going on? I stop to calm myself down. My heart is racing, and I feel like crying. Why is this scaring me so much? I hear rumbling behind me. It sounds like a train on tracks. It hoots its horn as if to warn me that it's coming. Louder and louder it goes. I'm about to literally throw up my heart. It's right up in my throat. I'm so scared. A huge gush of wind blows past me as the train screams one last time. It's so unimaginably loud that I cover my ears and squint my eyes. It feels like the world is spinning, and the scream fades to an echo. The ringing in my ears is only matched by the screeching sound of the train's brakes. Crying, I start running back to where I came, giving up completely. Damn, I must have went really far into the darkness. The adrenaline is pumping. As I run, I don't notice, but I start to see houses. I say out loud, "What?" as I stumble to my knees. I look at them, and they're the ones I saw as I walked towards my friends, and I think, thank you, God. I check my phone. It's 5 p.m., and now it's on 5%. And again, I think, what? I look around, and there it is, my friend's house. The snow has stopped. She's asleep when I knock on the door, and she says, "Where have you been? Why didn't you come over yesterday? You just went missing." I ask her, "The party is today, right?" And she said, "Man, it's 5 a.m. Where were you?" I don't know what happened, but this still scares the shit out of me to this day. So, what'd you think of those encounters, stories, occurrences, whatever they were? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And since in the last video I had asked if some people would like to hear me just talk about random creepy stuff at the end of a video, and a lot of people said they would, or I think a lot of people did anyways, maybe not, we're gonna find out. Anyways, these are some creepy, cool, scary things about Canada. So there's any number of things really just in people's own little areas. It's the same in the States. But these are just from a quick couple of Google searches, things that you can find about Canada. Now, some of these I already did know about before, so they're not new to me, but maybe they'll be new to you. You never know. So the first one is the cool one. It's the underground city in Montreal. And I don't mean like in the sense of that there's a whole civilization underground. More on that later. But it's like a series of tunnels that connects various corporate buildings and shopping centers, I believe. And there's like restaurants, stores, like hotels and everything down there. I've never been there, but it sounds super cool. So maybe someday I'll go there, whenever my French gets better anyways. And here's a cool one that I couldn't exactly find a specific story on or an encounter with. But the creature is known as the Toronto Tunnel Monster. So, in the past, before the city of Toronto expanded like it has in the last 50, 60 years, I would say, the city of Toronto used to have a lot of waterways that, as the city expanded, they were buried beneath the new infrastructure and everything like that. Like they were just built over. So what that leads to is you have a whole bunch of underwater waterways, and these would also over time become connected with the growing sewer system. And so, fast forward to 1978, and in the Toronto Sun, there was a sighting, or an encounter, with what's now known as the Toronto Tunnel Monster. And this again leads us to a 1978 sighting that was published in the Toronto Sun. He only went by his first name, Ernest, but he was known as being soft-spoken, and he was 51 years old at the time. He and his wife were raising a litter of kittens. One of the kittens disappeared, and Ernest decided that he wanted to search for it in the vicinity of their Parliament Street apartment. Now, this is where he stumbled upon the opening to a dark cave-like thing, and he crawled about 10 feet inwards. And this is where he said that he saw a living nightmare that I'll never forget. He only had a flashlight when he found this creature. He described it as being long and thin, looking almost like a monkey, 3 feet long, large teeth. It weighed maybe 30 pounds and had slate gray fur. However, it was the eyes that stood out for him. He said they were orange and red and slanted. He reluctantly spoke to reporters. He said he'll never forget it, that the creature spoke to him. In a hissing voice, it said, "Go away, go away," and then it took off down the long tunnel that was off to the side of the one he was in. He said that he was shaking with fear and got out of there as quick as he could. He was reluctant to tell anybody, and he never approached the media himself. He feared that people would think he was a drunk or crazy, and he felt that nobody would believe him. The Toronto Sun found him after hearing about his experience from a reliable contact who worked with a relative of Ernest's, one of a handful of people that he had confided the experience in. And he agreed as long as his last name was not revealed. So after this was published, nobody scoffed at him or thought he was crazy. In fact, some other people who worked in like sewer maintenance and stuff had also wrote in and said, people who work on the surface just don't know what it's like down here. It's a whole different world. And to go further back in Algonquin mythology, they have a similar creature named the Memikwesi, and these were small riverbank dwelling water spirits that were generally benign creatures. Sometimes they would blow canoes astray or steal things when they were not shown respect. In some Ojibwe traditions, they can only be seen by children and medicine men. In others, they can appear to anybody and maybe help humans who give them tobacco or other gifts. And these creatures were usually being described as having hairy faces and bodies. It's believed that their name may come from the Ojibwe word for hairy, mimi. So, do you think they're related? Do you maybe think that they're the same thing? Let me know down in the comments. And, do you have any of your own stories? You can feel free to send them to me at the email that's in the description below. I also have a PayPal and a Patreon if you want to support the channel that way. And with that, I think that I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching. Oh, and that little note that I made about there being an underground city, apparently under southern Ontario, there is an underground city named Excalibur, but I couldn't find much about that, so that's what that meant. Anyways, thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching.